Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Sheila Harris, and I'm the president of LAI International. And I'm here to invite you once again to a really exciting program that's been supported by our LEF, the Land Economics Foundation Research. And it's a different kind of topic than we've had before, but we are really interested in learning more about robots and their effect upon land use. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this program over to Michael Klein. Michael's a member of the program committee and also a fellow Phoenix LAI member. So we're keeping this all in the family, so to speak, here today. And Michael, would you please go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Sheila. So I'm proud to have the honor of introducing Justin Hollander, a professor at Tufts University and a true thought leader in the world of cognitive sciences and the design of cities. And so Justin has written some 8 books on the subject, and he was most recently co-editor of a book on urban experience and design, contemporary perspectives on improving the public realm, which was published this year, and has authored 7 other books, including cognitive architecture, designing for how we respond to the built environment. He did that with Ann Sussman, and urban social listening, potential and pitfalls for using microblogging data in studying cities. So as a straightforward finance guy, I'm very much looking forward to finding out how all of that works in relation to bots in our quickly evolving world of social media. So with that, I'd love to turn the program over to Justin. But one thing I will say is when Justin's done with his presentation, we'll have a survey that I'd like everybody to answer their favorite 2 items on that. I have a handful of questions for Justin. And then when we're done with that, we'll open it up for audience participation. And there's a button that you can push for Q&A, and you should see that on your screen. So with no further delay, Justin, take it away. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michael, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. Thank you, Sheila Harris and Sheila Hamilton and John DeVries. This has been an honor to have a chance to collaborate with a LAI and LEF. With their support, I've been able to work with some collaborators and to be able to do this interesting research, which is what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I have a slideshow, so we'll get started with that. Okay, so I did share a summary of this research that was disseminated through the LAI newsletter. So hopefully you got a chance to look at that. If not, it should just still be in your inbox. I'm also happy to share with you that directly, or I have a full report I can share with you. So at the end of the presentation, I'll give my email address, or you can just Google me, and you know, if you're looking for some additional details, definitely let me know. So this should look familiar to a lot of you. It is the 20th century par excellence version of what it means to engage the community with planning development decisions. So everyone gets in a room together. This is, of course, pre-COVID, how close they are to each other, right? And someone at the front of the room just talks, and everyone else grumbles, maybe gets in a line to give feedback. I mean, this is one of the most inefficient things that we've ever created in the planning development world. It's only the people who have the time, so you're looking at like a lot of retirees, or who have a financial stake So we're talking about maybe people who are involved in a project or next door neighbors or others. So this is not how we should be engaging the community with major plan decisions. So personally, I've been very interested in this for a long time, and I have experimented with different types of online community engagement. Like, how can we use the power of the internet to bring people in, to help them participate in planning decisions? And so this is a project that we call Open Neighborhood, and we use this in a few different communities. We created a 3D immersive environment and allow people to log in and then walk around the development and comment on it. So that kind of thing. But it doesn't have to only be online. You could bring those laptops to high schools, which is what you see on the right, and you can make people part of a process through different types of social media, internet sources. But there's a problem, and this is a problem that I became particularly concerned about in 2016. And not to say it wasn't a problem before that, but I was just so excited about as an urban planner, like, whoa, we can really just do so much more than that image I showed you in the beginning of the community meeting. But then I started to get a little concerned. And as many of you remember, in 2016, there was just really compelling evidence that the Russian government used just a whole network of bots to impersonate real people and influence general discourse around the election. And subsequent to then, we've actually found that bots have been used in many different forums, through elections specifically, but in other ways, just to kind of foment or unrest and to co-opt processes. So a lot to be concerned about when we kind of put all our eggs in the kind of the online internet basket. We have to be aware that these bots are operating. And one thing I thought was particularly disturbing was it wasn't just that the kind of online conversation was being adulterated, but there were instances where prominent journalists, NBC News, New York Times, they would be fishing for a quote on some sort of topic, and they would find someone on Twitter who said it, and then they would quote that person on Twitter. And there's situations where those were later discovered to be bots. These were not actual people. So what do I mean by bot? Well, instead of going through sort of boring technical definition, what I think I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you. This is what a bot is. Uma is a bot. And she's a bot that me and an undergraduate computer science student put together. It took about 20 hours. Okay, so basically something any teenager can do. And she uses artificial intelligence. This programming that we put in allows her to do a few things. She can like and retweet messages with comments. I don't know if you've all used Twitter, but this is true, this kind of interaction with social media. You do the same kind of thing on Facebook. She can also post images. She takes them from Reddit, and then she uses this program that Microsoft has made freely available called computer vision, and then it interprets what's in the image. So the first part in this clause, not what I expected, comes from a series of, I think we have about 30 different possible pre-clauses, and then another 30 kind of post, and then we input the computer vision output. So this is what Uma sees, and then it puts it there. So it makes it seem like it's kind of lifelike. She can also just write extemporaneously. Now, all she needs is the writing prompt. So there's this amazing program called GPT-2, which has also been made freely available. GPT-3 has not been made available, and that's something that is considered to just be simply too dangerous because it's so good. If you read some of these tweets, you might recognize that GPT-2 is actually not that good. But basically what happens is we feed Uma a writing prompt, just a few sentences, and then she takes from that something that she tries to say coherently. But bots aren't really that smart, and GPT-2 is not that sophisticated, but you can see this is what she comes up with. I'll give you a second to just read these. So, I mean, it seems clear to me that these come across as looking like and feeling like regular tweets. A close read would maybe raise some eyebrows, and people be like, "What is going on?" But not that many. I can tell you, we have maybe about 180 or so followers so far, and I just happened to look at the profile of one of my followers, and that follower, in their profile, in addition to saying that they like hiking and skiing and all that, this guy says, "I hate bots." Okay, so of course he could be a bot. But if he's not a bot, then we fooled him. But the point of this exercise is to kind of just, for me and my colleagues and my team, we want to understand how these bots operate and how they work. And you can see how easy it is to create something that looks very human. And even that picture, this image right here, that's from a website, makeahumanface.com. It generates these images of people that don't really exist. It's based on these very advanced machine learning models that allow the computer to extract from real images of people to create fake images. So Uma is only the beginning. So this whole idea of getting people connected through online means to the land development and planning process is really at risk. So the Land Economics Foundation provided the funding for me and my team to catalog the presence of these kinds of nefarious bots at major real estate development projects across the US. And what I'm going to do is kind of just walk you through the findings. I have some charts and graphs, and again, I invite you to read more detail, and then I'm happy to answer questions now or after the presentation. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to set up a time to talk, discuss what we've done. I'm happy to go into more detail, but I just want to kind of just at this point just kind of give just a nice overview, and then we'll have ample time for discussion. So the first thing I had to do is try to figure out what are the criteria for looking at major real estate development projects. I didn't want to focus on anything too small. I didn't want to focus on any sort of like one type. I wanted to have some variety. I also wanted to kind of look at different parts of the country. And I also was only interested in ones, the project where there was some sort of interest, and that this was not something that was kind of apolitical. There's no controversy, then you wouldn't really see any bot activity. And then only where we could find at least 20 Twitter messages concerning the project. So the result of this was 21 projects, and we analyzed over 41,000 tweets. And here's just a summary of the projects. This is slide 1 of 2. But I thought it would be useful just to kind of just show you some of these details. So definitely some variety in terms of the type of project, location, what state they're in, size, and then you actually do see right away also some variety in terms of variation in terms of how much Twitter activity there is. But we really were trying to focus on projects that were essentially ongoing. I mean, even here you see the Trans Bay project, even though it started in 2005, it's still in progress. Development in San Francisco is definitely a challenge. And then all the projects that are are just newer, but still there's a lot of activity and interest. And this is the second slide. And I'll talk about where development is hard in New York City, but that is in progress. That's actually in the works, the Riverside South project. But what you see here is Hudson Yards, almost 15,000 tweets. and then Washington Terrace, that's one of the lower ones, Millennium Place. So here's what we did. We trained a computer model to look at all of the tweets and to identify which ones are human or not. Now, there are some really exciting new machine learning techniques available to do this kind of task. And that's why I have the computer science student to help me. They're learning the kind of state of the art here at Tufts where I teach. And so the model, it looks at existing Twitter accounts, and it looks at accounts that have already been labeled bots. And then it is able to distinguish, it kind of essentially teaches itself. What's interesting is it's really a black box. You can't like ask it, oh, so why did you pick that? Why did you say that and not that? There's no discussion. It's simply just an output. You put in the information, you give it as much as you can, it goes through these iterations, and you can then use like a test data set to understand whether or not your data is accurate. And in our case, I think we were able to get it to be over 80% accurate with the test data. So the model, when looking at the test data that we gave them, where we knew which box was current, it was almost over 80% accurate. And then when we gave it the real data, we felt comfortable. So here's what it looks like. So there's two different models that we calibrated. One was using this technique called SMODE, and this one was not. I'll talk about SMODE in a second. So this one only done with 20 plus tweets, and what you see is almost 40% in the case of the Los Angeles Bronx project, but at least 10% in all projects had tweets with bots in them, that were tweets that were generated by bots. So the Twitter data that we used was unbalanced in the sense that we don't actually have a lot of proven bots, but we have like lots of people who are proven to be real humans. So it's unbalanced, and that's just the nature of social media data. So we use this technique, the SMODE technique, which allows you to deal with unbalanced data sets. And so we ran it using that model, and there the numbers were higher actually for some of the projects. You can see the Commerce Point, over 50% of the tweets were identified as bots. So this is not an exact science. What we're trying to do is try to look at kind of the ranges of possibilities, and clearly what you're seeing here is a lot of these tweets are generated by bots. So there's some important limitations that I want to talk about. By calibrating a model, we were able to look at tens of thousands of bots, but it's not the same as a human. So a human being can do a better job of deciphering, but it's not efficient to be able to, for an individual person to look at tens of thousands. So we did some quality control. We were able to look at a sample, and we were able to identify where the model seemed to be accurate and where it wasn't, and it did very well there. But I think that future research should be more systematic about that. But the real way that you could really understand the threat here is by designing an experiment. Now that UMA that I showed you is a good example. But could we not create maybe like 10 UMAs, and each one of them kind of have different kind of personalities? Some are interested in affordable housing, some are interested in transportation, others maybe finance, and unleash them to go off and converse and engage with the land development and planning communities. There's some deceit involved in that, because that's kind of the thing we're arguing against. But the point is, if you could do that in an ethical way, if there's a way that you could do that fairly, that would give you the actual raw data to see how are these bots influencing the the conversation. And I would never suggest doing it in any kind of real world project, but just in general, just how do people respond to these bots? And then to have the data ourselves, because we can track those bots ourselves, and we can monitor their engagements, how many tweets they get, how quickly they get retweeted, what that network, who are those people who are tweeting and liking. So those are all ideas for future studies. But I think that the big implications here for this research is that we cannot just rely on the simply moving our in-person community engagement processes online. There's too much of a risk. In some of those cases I showed you, I mean, the idea that 50% are bots, and it's not just bots, I have to mention, though, there's also those trolls out there. So the bot is where it's automated, but a troll is just a person who's just annoying and awful. And that's, so like, let's imagine you're involved in a project, and let's say in Phoenix, and there's someone who's harassing the public online process from Ohio. So this idea that we can just open up our processes to online and then that's the end of it, it's just not going to work. So we need to be aware of both bots and trolls and all these other potential hazards of online community engagement, and try to develop measures to limit their impact, and continue to find ways to bring people in person to have those kinds of authentic engagement experiences to complement anything that might happen online that's protected. And so it just means a rethinking, a reimagining of what this digital community engagement is really all about. It's not just about copying and pasting what we've done in the past onto a website or onto a bunch of social media feeds. We've got to find ways to be able to essentially trick the bot and to make sure that we're dealing with humans, when we invite people to be part of community processes. The consequences of not doing that are that these processes will be co-opted. They're not necessarily going to be from Russian bot farms, but they could be from other actors who are in the development process who are fighting against what we might be trying to accomplish. So to be able to create that level playing field, to create just and fair, equitable outcomes, we've got to find ways to keep these internet community engagement processes fair and open and bot free. So thank you for, actually, I left my slide on my email. I did say I was going to show it to you. So thank you for joining me and joining the session. And I really welcome any questions or comments that you might have.
Great. Justin, thank you very much. I'm kind of fascinated by how this is also current in our broader world of people seeking information, which leads me to a survey question that I would like to ask, that we put that up for everyone to answer. Would like to see your two most used ways of getting information. There's 6 options there. I happen to be looking at mine on an iPad, and I see 4 at the moment. So scroll through and give us your top 2, and we'll share the results when we're done. So that's that. So Justin, I guess one of the questions that came to mind, and this is broader, and you may not know the answer, so I'll ask for sort of an educated guess if you don't, okay? And it's, just let us know that that's really what's going on. You are dealing in a really specialized world of planning and zoning, right? So, and having sat on planning and zoning boards and done some of this myself, I was in the last big deal that I shepherd through was in a community of about 75,000 people, and we would get 200 at a meeting. and our meetings did have the same demographic look as your early photo in our presentation. People are busy with their lives, and they don't and they don't get engaged, and so it's a relatively finite group that do. But yet you were finding a fair amount of bots in something that's super focused and I would think not on everyone's radar. So what do you think the percentage of bots are across broader conversations? Like as an example, here in the United States, we've had this little thing called an election, 30 days ago, and there's still, there's a lot of dialogue back and forth in the Twitter universe, Facebook. Everybody's been kind of inundated with it. But so, what would you be your guess, or or extrapolate? How much of the stuff that people are reading is possibly bots? Forget trolls, just bots.
Right. Yeah. And so as part of our research for the study, we did come across some other studies that found that the numbers were between 1/3 and 40% on average. So what we've done here is really kind of confirm what's been seen elsewhere, that just in general, that conversation that's going on out there. I actually I clicked on Twitter, and that's where I get a lot of my news. And yeah, it's definitely hazardous. It's not just kind of our world of land development and planning. It's broader than that people are being compromised, and we are being deceived. No question about it. I have a teenage daughter, and she gets all of her news from her social media feeds, and she's like almost like once a week she tells me about some news story, and then we later find out that it's not true. So this is very common.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely entered the trust but verify mode of operation. So for those of us that don't know how to build computer models that would help us detect bots in our feeds of information, that would be including me. Is there any sort of rule of thumbs that you discovered that would be useful for all of us to have as in our toolkit as we go through and we're reading anything on online from somebody's so-called opinion, right? And you want to hope that you're getting somebody's worthwhile opinion. So.
I mean, rules of thumb. I mean, there are websites where you can enter like a Twitter handle or a Facebook account, and bot. I think it's called bot or not. Bot or not is one of them. So you can actually like do that kind of research on your own on a one-off basis, and so we needed to develop that more elaborate computer model just because we were dealing with trying to understand 40,000 tweets. But on an individual basis, day to day, yeah, that's worth it just to just do that, like a quick search, and just see what the data is out there. The best ones, though, they develop backstories, and they find ways to seem more real. So it's a minefield out there.
So I have two more questions that I'd like to ask, and then we will open this up for questions from the audience. And I am seeing that we're getting a number of them popping up on screen. But so given that people are probably catching on to the fact that there's bots out there, I think a lot of people are getting more and more skeptical about where they're getting their information. In the long run, do you see a big push to move to electronic planning and zoning, or do you see it going sort of going? Notwithstanding COVID, let's just take COVID. Let's assume that we're back to having actual public meetings. Okay. Do you see us continuing to migrate toward sort of an electronic means of gathering votes, if you will, or public input?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I do think that COVID is relevant because I feel like the stigma has dissipated. I mean, I can tell you that where I live, in New England, we have a New England town meeting, and there were discussions about, like, do we really need to do it the same way they did it 180 years ago? Maybe we could do some version online. Of course, everyone was like, no, that's terrible. We can't do that. The law is clear. We must do in person. And then, well, actually, it turns out we don't need to. We can just do it online. So like all that resistance, the sense that the laws were just like so ossified and that we had to just do things certain ways, it's that's really melted. And so what we're going to be seeing is just so much more acceptance and of online community engagement. And so I think that really just emphasizes how important this work is, because it's like, that's fine if we can do that, but we need to be cautious. We need to constantly be very vigilant about the hazards when we do that.
Any experience? I mean, it seems so. We're doing this on Zoom, and there's a number, and there's a lot of other platforms for doing this. So, without preference to one or the other, it seems to me that this would be relatively difficult to hack with AI, but that's today. Okay. Because like the person that you put up for UMA looked pretty real, right? And so I mean, again, it's a slippery slope here because short of being in person, I guess we just have a risk there. Turning it around, is there a way that bots can be a positive?
Wow, what a great question. I'm sure they can, and that's part of why I've enjoyed having the chance to experiment with UMA. And yeah, I don't know exactly, but to be able to engage with people in a meaningful way. And I do know that like a lot of companies are doing this. I don't know, I had like a problem with my cell phone, and it was a bot that said, I'm here to help. And yeah, it had that kind of built-in artificial intelligence, just like UMA did. So I think that there's a sense that people want to use that for customer service. But maybe for some planning engagement, that kind of thing could be positive. Yeah, that's a really interesting question.
The audience using the chat button in their app have asked a handful of questions, and I think Sheila, I wanted if we've gotten a full complement of answers to the survey, we might pop that up here in a second. So and I don't see it, but did we just pull put the?
I can see it.
Okay, so it's up. Give me 1 sec here. I can't see everything at the same time. So, all right. So, all right. Let me get back to questions here. So one of the early questions was, do you have any information or examples of how much bots may have cost projects in terms of requiring unnecessary concessions or false impacts? In Los Angeles and at Los Angeles World Airports, we conduct public outreach on project entitlements and environmental impact review. We seek input from the general quote unquote public, but especially prioritize getting feedback from stakeholders who by definition really have a stake in the project. I will add that that's a monumentally large project, and I ran a similarly large project in the city of Los Angeles pre-bots in Warner Center, getting that specific plan done. And we were highly reliant on people showing up and expressing their opinions, or at least email their opinions. Now, again, email could have been bots. But do you have a sense for costs of this technology and additional extractions that may have occurred because of the technology?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that that question was asked. I mean, that is the motivation for me. I just feel like the extent to which these bots can disrupt processes, whether it means cost more or misrepresent or kill a project or keep a good bad project alive. I mean, the idea that they could exert those kinds of influences is really what gets me really upset. What we've done here, which I'm really happy with, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished, me and my team. It's really just the beginning. Those questions about how much, I mean, that's next. I mean, that's what, I mean, I would love to be part of that. I hope others would also be part of it. But I think this is a really critical line of research that people need to be really looking at, because the stakes are high. I will estimate that the cost could be substantial, 20-30%. I mean, that you're really just looking at such a potential for disruption that I think that this is not a inconsequential impact in a way.
Okay, great. So one of the questions is specific to Twitter. Do they have a way of banning bots? And are you aware? Are they doing anything to sort of isolate bots or shut them down?
Well, I mean, Twitter has built into its systems some deterrents to, I'll call them nefarious bots. So kind, gentle, non-dangerous bots can function pretty easily. But once a bot starts to be really disruptive, the Twitter algorithms do identify it. And then, right before the recent presidential election, they did ban tens of thousands of accounts. I mean, it's possible in that dragnet they swept up actual humans, but they definitely have been making a concerted effort to try to target bots that are causing trouble and removing them. So yes.
So circling back to development in particular, in your survey, did you find a pattern of favorable or unfavorable to a project or a leaning of the bots, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a great question. We did not do that kind of analysis. That would be like a great thing to do in the future. And if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share my data and we can collaborate. I think that the easy way to kind of get a sense is just by kind of looking at the characteristics of the account that's promoting it. And what we did find, just like what we noticed, was that most of the accounts were pro-development. That there were very few accounts that were identified here that were not in favor of development. And so I think that's probably the bot activity is probably mainly in favor.
That's exactly the opposite of what I would have imagined. But then I was doing planning in Southern California. So it seemed like everything was opposition there. I'm scanning. Give me 1 sec here. We talked about these things. Stand by. There's a lot of comments about static. So I think. So I guess one of the questions that came up about going to all electronic was the question itself was about equity and public access, and I'm going to take a stab at that, having run a bunch of meetings like that. There's always been a problem with so-called equity, because when you have a public meeting at 7 o'clock at the XYZ auditorium, not everybody can get there. Whether they may have a car, they may have a job, they may have a family member they need to take care of. So there's always, it's just not a perfect process. It just changes the way that the meetings are handled change in that respect. So if the planning meeting is in a Zoom setting and somebody doesn't have a computer, they have the same problem in essence as if they didn't have a car. So I'm not sure that it changes the issue much with respect to equity. It just sort of changes the venue. So I hope that answers the question. So I think I've answered most of the audience questions. I would ask Sheila Harris or Richard Cook, who are also on the line and work with us on. We're all on the programs committee. If either of them have a question they'd like to pose at this point in time.
Richard, why don't you go ahead? You've been more involved in this than I have. I find this interesting and disturbing all at the same time. Having been an advocate for affordable housing, I know that many of the disenfranchised folks that we've worked with had challenges in getting to the meetings and other things that Michael just referred to. So that is of a concern to me, that as we move forward, these get stacked, with people that are anti. To get to Michael's point, everybody in Southern California seems to be against everything. And that's not unique just to Southern California. That happens all over the world. So that would be my concern is how do you ensure that the bot input is balanced and also isn't just pro-developer or anti-affordable housing or whatever the case may be. And then Richard, I turn it over to you for your comments too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's my concern as well, that that these bots are not going to be a fair representation of the attitudes, and that they the extent that, let's say, a developer hires a communications firm and they unleash an army of bots to kind of disrupt the conversation around a project, will the neighbors in the community that's fighting it, will they also do the same thing? I mean, and is it just going to be like an arms race? So I mean, I think that's what I worry about, and I think that we need to have better systems in place to kind of prevent that, those kinds of like unfair practices from dominating public decision making.
Thanks, Justin. And this is Rick Cook here. I joined a little late on our session, and I already violated the rules by sending out a question to all attendees, not just to the panelists, I think. I like public consultations, you find that the rules are a little dynamic. I have I guess about a 40-year career in engaging with the public in large projects in Canada. And one of my experiences was 16 days of public hearings where people weren't very happy with the project. So I don't think there's too much that's going to be different. There's going to be different perspectives on these projects, no matter how we do it. And I think it's fascinating what you're doing with the technology here. I think to Sheila's point, that from my perspective, the main thing is that there's fairness and transparency as we go forward. And I'm convinced that good projects will go forward on that basis. And it's always been a problem of I would call it the squeaky wheel problem, that whoever. Yeah, and in this case, we have an artificial squeaky wheel that we have to identify and make clear to the decision makers that this is not something that they should be paying attention to as much as they should to real stakeholders, I think was one of the comments in the chat box. So for me, I'm curious on the technology if there can be a timeout chair, and I call it a hockey penalty box because my Canadian background. But if you can identify something that's suspicious and say you need to go through an additional filter before we post it, or we give someone a day or two to respond to that, for example, I'm wondering if that might have some appeal to a municipal councillor or municipal planner or developers or applicants, so that it's this sort of instantaneous viral explosion that to me is new about this Twitter universe. Have you had any thoughts on that in terms of research?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point that people just thrive on the ability to have that kind of like instant sharing and then instant response. And so what's less popular is this notion of like a moderation, a moderator and moderation. And that moderator can kind of make sure that everything is okay when it gets posted. So, something like Twitter is not set up for that, but certainly like a local government could create an online planning process where they built in that kind of moderation so that the influence of bots would be minimized. So I think that's a great point.
So can you identify them that quickly, I guess, is a question with your software?
Well, I was suggesting human moderator, but no, you could build in a system that, like what we've developed, that would automatically review each post to try to assess whether it was by a human or not. You could do that too.
There's your career for you.
So one of the audience members asked about monitoring and tracking social media activity for a project or a topic, and I suspect, the question is like how to, and I suspect that that's different for each of the different platforms. But when you were doing this work, did you set up specific searches so that you were getting triggered, it's the wrong word, but getting a feed that, okay, time to look again?
Well, no, it was just one point in time in the beginning of the study, we just looked at all of the Twitter messages that were related to each project. Once we identified the projects, then we did searching for each project, and we used a combination of different keywords: the name of the project, the location, development. We tried development or project or real estate, things like that, and then downloaded all of those. That's when we got the 40,000, and then did not continue to monitor on an ongoing basis.
Okay, so no particular I guess recurring search other than the one that you would type in each time.
Right, but that's not like a big deal. Certainly someone could do that on like an ongoing basis, and
sure,
in the course of like a year, kind of track the kind of discussion or activity around a project. And I think that that's something that is widely done in the for-profit sector. Especially bigger firms, if they have any kind of substantial budget for communications and public relations, they're probably doing that anyway.
They're monitoring their reputation, if you will,
right,
on account. The next question that came in is asking about regulation of bots, and where does that stand in the legal system? Is there any laws or case law on bots? And I certainly haven't heard of any. Have you seen or heard or looked at that issue?
No, well, certainly not in the United States, though. Every once in a while, Congress they bring all the heads of all the tech companies. Just recently, a couple weeks ago, they all went down to Capitol Hill or or remotely on Zoom, and testify. And so I think that there is an appetite with definitely in the United States Congress, but also some state houses to restrict the activities of these types of bot actors. But frankly, it's complicated in how you would do that, and so I think that that's the issue, that enforcement becomes quite a quagmire. So.
Right, and in some respect, it is a bit of a sticks and stones issue, i.e., it's words. Words are important. I'm not discounting that, but it is. I mean, it's hard to. First of all, what you've already told us is it's hard to identify them without some form of bot to identify the bot, and then you have to assess whether or not they're really changing the outcome of the argument, which is not particular. I mean, if I understand correctly, I'm not sure that that's clear at this point either. And so then, if you were to have regulation, it's usually to stop harm, if you will, and then you've got to be able to measure and identify that. Is that consistent with what your thinking is?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So, so I'm not sure that there's an answer for it yet. I mean, I will say the more I have experienced sort of I guess the last 30 days of listening to how technology can be manipulated to the benefit of whoever wants whatever outcome it is. I do sometimes wonder if we should just revert to our old-fashioned systems for things that are of importance. So, as an example, that public meeting that's well noticed to a broad, as broadly as you possibly can, and that does mean using all the electronic media that's available to make the constituents in that area aware that something's going on. So, as an example, somebody brought up the Los Angeles airport project that impacts a lot of people outside of the city limits of LA, even though the city of LA owns and operates that airport, because people from other communities probably have some dealing with that airport. So wide and broad dissemination of the meeting, but I don't know that I can get comfortable with the meetings being pure, just short of a video type of meeting, given where we are in AI on video at this time. And that could get worse over time, right? So I don't know that we've got any other questions. Let me take a quick peek here. I think that's it. In the audience, if you have any other questions, please bring it up. And Justin, I've found that this really interesting. I have to say, I'm floored by the 1/3 to 40% of the communications being bots. That one kind of struck me. So. Very interesting, and thank you very much. I think with that, I will say, Sheila, it's all yours.
Thank you. Again, Justin, thank you so much for this great research, and I want to thank everybody for attending today and reminding everyone, when you renew your dues for LAI, to include a donation to LEF to continue this great work. And Richard, do you have anything you would like to add? Maybe some teasers about what we're going to be hearing next year?
Yes, thank you, Sheila. That was a good, we've got 2 upcoming webinars now. Just today, we're confirming January 22nd, I think noon in Central Time, for a discussion on Richard T. Ely and Homer Hoyt. and we're really looking forward to that. I don't have a lot of details, but we'll get that out to you if you could pencil in that date. And then my memory is February 10th for a presentation on an economic update from I think it's Professor Lundgren, is it? And that'll be coming again as part of the world global LAI initiative to open to every member of LAI.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Justin. Continue to stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.